And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this sunny, really nice June day in New York, June 2nd, 2025 in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, 2 days ago, that's right, was Clint Eastwood's 95th birthday. Today, June 2nd, marks the 30th anniversary of a film that I would consider to be on the kind of second tier of great Clint Eastwood films in which he both all three, produces, directs, and stars in, but where he's the triple threat, where he not only got the film together, was behind the camera, but, well, he's not actually the lead, but he plays the second lead in this film. And it was a movie based on a runaway, massive, much critically derided, which means the critics thought it was, well, they thought it was what it was, pure trash. It was a huge best-selling book, which was not a very good book, but people loved it. It was like Shades of Grey before Shades of Grey, only I think there's even more sex in the book. And I guess one of the things that people objected to is that it was not hot young people having sex, but a middle-aged woman and a middle-aged guy, OMF&G, the idea of people, I hate to say it, the idea of people my age in a romance novel, oh my God, shiver me freaking timbers. But the book was Robert James Waller's The Bridges of Madison County. And the movie, same title, came out on this day, 1995. Now, Waller's book was released, I want to say it was released in 1991. It hit hardcover, meaning, I don't know if it's the same today, but back then, hardcover versions always came out first. And in the pre-internet era, you have the whole world in the palm of your hand era, people would read hardcover novels as soon as they hit the streets. And I remember in the summer of 1991, John Grisham's The Firm, which had just come out, and people were tearing through it. Well, if memory serves, The Bridges of Madison County was released maybe a little bit after that. Because I have distinctive, again, this is ridiculous the way that my memory works, the number of people I saw on the Long Island Railroad in the summer of 1991 reading The Firm. It was enough for me to remember it 34 years later. It made an impression that so many different people were reading this hardcover book. And I gotta tell you, tough to put in your briefcase. Better have a big briefcase. My dad never read hardcover books on the train because he did not like to carry a suitcase level briefcase. But The Bridges of Madison County, I did not have any knowledge of it when it was out, when it was selling like hotcakes, when people were going crazy in both directions. It's the most beautiful romance novel ever written. This is such pure unadulterated trash. That's a phrase that you can Google with relation to this book. Pure unadulterated trash. So someone such as Clint Eastwood, who was coming off the stupendous success of Unforgiven, won Best Picture and Best Director. When people such as myself say that Clint Eastwood won 4 Oscars, you say, well, how did he win 4 Oscars? Did he win for actor? No, he won for best movie, which would be, because it was his production, Malpaso Productions. You know, that's why we call Clint the man from Malpaso. That's not a nickname that exists in the ether without a reason. His production company on the Warner Brothers lot is Malpaso Productions, and Malpaso means bad step. And circa 1968, when Clint Eastwood said, hey, I'm going to form my own production shingle on a Warner Brothers lot, most of his friends said, Clint, this is a bad step. So he called the company Malpaso, and Malpaso Productions is still around. And believe it or not, 95-year-old Clint Eastwood, I just read it, and maybe some of you saw it, he is supposedly deep in pre-production for another movie. God bless Clint Eastwood. The energy, the enthusiasm, 30 years after he was, well, he's kind of old. Yeah, he was kind of old 35 or 30 years ago when he made The Bridges of Madison County. But after the success of Unforgiven, the stupendous box office success and critical acclaim he received specifically for his performance in Wolfgang Petersen's next, in 1993, it was the year after Unforgiven, which was summer 92. But In the Line of Fire is the biggest box office hit of Clint Eastwood's career, dollar for dollar. Again, 30 years ago. It's a bigger hit, way bigger than Gran Torino, relatively speaking. But Clint was not involved in the production. That is the last movie that he was in, that he had a major role, where he was simply a hired gun. He was simply an actor filling a role, in that case, of Secret Service agent Frank Harrigan. And then Clint also acted, directed, produced A Perfect World, which came out later in 93. That's his collaboration with Kevin Costner. It's kind of underrated, but a lot of people who've seen it will tell you it's a fucking masterpiece, and it's pretty close to a masterpiece. But I guess there was a little bit of Clint Eastwood Oscars fatigue, because his performance in the Line of Fire probably got the strongest notices of his career, and I would argue it is the best performance of his career. It is the most nuanced. For Clint Eastwood, In the Line of Fire is what The Natural was for Robert Redford. Two guys, huge movie stars, great men, great names in cinema. The most nuanced performance, the most three-dimensional performance in Robert Redford's career is his work as Roy Hobbs in The Natural. And I believe the most three-dimensional, nuanced work in Clint Eastwood's career is as Secret Service agent Frank Harrigan in 1993's In the Line of Fire. So you had A Perfect World come out at the end of the year, and it actually tore it up overseas, but it bombed in the States. There was too many big movies out at the same time, from In the Line of Fire, In the Name of the Father, Remains of the Day, The Age of Innocence, The Fugitive. There were just too many big movies in 93 to compete, and A Perfect World kind of got lost in the shuffle. It's a very serious film. It's not a fun time at the movies. So Clint then, the first I heard of Bridges of Madison County, because as I said, I never heard of the book. I didn't know anything about it. When Clint, and it's such an inside baseball moment. It's true that all of the big hitters, they all know each other. That doesn't necessarily mean they're friends. It just means that they all know each other. Like literally, they all know each other. So by virtue of winning the previous year's Best Director Oscar, Clint, at the 94 Oscars for films released in 93, he had the privilege, and it is a privilege, even for someone like Eastwood. You'll see, like, for example, at the 95 Oscars, that was the Oscars that Forrest Gump won, Best Picture was presented by Pacino and De Niro. You know, they were working together in Heat. They looked like they did in Heat. So it is a big honor to get to be the last person or the last couple of people on stage. It's normally reserved for the Connerys, the Eastwoods, the Tom Cruises, Newman back in the day, guys like that. So Clint is up there presenting Best Director, and everyone knew Steven Spielberg was going to win. So Spielberg was announced as the winner, and they had a nice moment. Now, they had actually worked together a few times previously. They worked on a TV movie series called Amazing Stories. And Clint actually, I think, served as executive producer, and Spielberg directed one of the segments. I think, I could be wrong about that, but I know that they had worked together, is the idea. So after Spielberg won his Oscar for Schindler's List, when they were being interviewed, there were interviews being conducted in the gallery, backstage, whether it was ABC, whoever it was, it doesn't really matter. But Spielberg was asked, do you know what your next project is going to be as director? And he smiled and he laughed, because Clint was standing there, and he says, well, I want to do Bridges of Madison County, and I want Clint to play Kincaid. Now, I knew nothing of the story, but I remember in that moment, the name of the book, it didn't mean anything to me, and I thought that I didn't think he said Kincaid. The name of the character that Spielberg wanted Clint to play, which obviously he did end up playing, but the name of the character is Robert Kincaid, Kincaid. I thought he said Kincaid, and I didn't know who the fuck is Kincaid. I wasn't really on the internet in 95. It existed, but I only had it at NYU, and I wasn't that excited where, oh my God, I have to Google this 30 years ago. I thought Spielberg wanted to do some kind of a weird, like Camelot type, Excalibur, like something along those lines, but it wasn't making sense, because who the hell is Kincaid? And nobody knew who that was. So what ended up happening is that Spielberg, he ended up producing Bridges of Madison County. Clint did agree to star in it, but the original plan was for Spielberg to direct it. And then he got too busy and he bowed out because Spielberg was already kind of calculating. He was thinking in terms of Amistad and some of the other projects that he was involved in as producer, Speed 2, Cruise Control. There were a whole bunch. Spielberg is always incredibly busy. So he ended up not wanting to direct The Bridges of Madison County. He just wanted to produce, and that's fine. And Clint didn't have a problem with it. Amblin Entertainment, Malpaso co-production. Again, DreamWorks was still some time away. It didn't exist yet. I'm sure they were thinking about that too. Maybe that was another reason why Spielberg dropped out of directing. But Clint, and this is something that happened in a similar vein in 75 and 76 when he was preparing Outlaw Josie Wales, and he originally had he had hired Phil Kaufman, a filmmaker he absolutely loved, to direct Josie Wales, and he just didn't agree with the approach that Kaufman was taking for that film. So he ended up replacing him and directing the movie himself. And so with The Bridges of Madison County, Clint was a big fan of a terrific Australian filmmaker named Bruce Beresford, who famously, his movie, Driving Miss Daisy, that was him, won Best Picture, and somehow Beresford, I don't even think he had the courtesy of a Best Director nomination. And Billy Crystal, quick-witted as always, he seemed almost a little chapped and angry on behalf of Beresford, who I assume he was friends with. But after they announced Driving Miss Daisy as the winner, Billy Crystal couldn't resist it. He said, well, I guess this movie just directed itself. And he wasn't wrong, because that was disgraceful that Beresford didn't get a nomination. So Clint was a big fan. He was a big fan of Bruce Beresford. Beresford had done a film called Breaker Morant in the early 80s about the Boer War. He was a very talented craftsman. He had a great eye. He was good with the quieter scenes. Just a home run hitter. So Clint did not want to direct Bridges of Madison County. And even someone like him, he had to rewire his thinking, because when he's told by Steven Spielberg that Spielberg's going to direct, oh, this is great. I'll just star in it and I'll help with the production. Whatever it was that was said between the two guys, we don't know the specifics. We just know this. So when Spielberg bowed out of the directing part, it's not like Clint immediately said, I'm gonna do it myself. He hired Bruce Beresford. And similar to what happened with Phil Kaufman on Josie Wales, the first couple of weeks, Clint wasn't happy with Beresford's approach, and he ended up replacing him and doing it on his own. And thing is, it's rare in Hollywood for something like that to happen. And Clint Eastwood is not in any way a polarizing figure. He is not known as a guy, wielding an axe to just rip shit up, start fresh. Sylvester Stallone with Rocky V shot 6 weeks and didn't like what he was doing and apologized to everybody, including the studio. I got to start over. Give me some time. I can't make my character this way. So unfortunately, it happens in the business. Spielberg being the guy to, for example, pull the trigger in 85 when they had to replace Eric Stoltz when they were able to get Michael J. Fox finally. It's never easy, and Clint has done nothing but heap praise on Bruce Beresford. You could find these quotes. What a professional he was. What a great filmmaker. We just had a different idea and a different vision for this story, et cetera, et cetera. So Clint ended up behind the camera. And when a movie came out, I saw it opening day. I think that it is probably, next to Brief Encounter, which I not that long ago talked about on the channel, next to Brief Encounter, I think Bridges of Madison County is the next best cinematic love story, where the kind of star-crossed Romeo and Juliet kind of angle is the whole story. This is not where you have an action movie with a romantic subplot. The whole movie is the romance, one way or the other. And there are films that that are kind of romantic comedies or romantic dramas, such as 500 Days of Summer, Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence, speaking of incredible films from '93, Remains of the Day, the Merchant Ivory film with the great Sir Anthony Hopkins. But The Bridges of Madison County, the book being as shitty as it was, that Clint was able to make movie magic. It's just another feather in the cap. It's another incredible turn in a career filled with, holy shit, how did he pull this off? And what I was saying with Spielberg, when Spielberg saw the film, and this was one of the things that sort of convinced me, of course, I got to see it for Clint, but what convinced me this is going to be good, I'm going to really enjoy this movie, is that Spielberg's reaction to, I don't think it was a press screening, may have been a preview for a couple of days, but whatever it was. Now, Spielberg could be full of shit, right? It's not impossible that he just want to, support his friend and co-producer on this film. But it was the way that Spielberg explained himself. When he was asked, what did you think, you were going to direct? And it wasn't Siskel and Ebert, but maybe it was Gene Shalit. It was one of the big movie critics of the day that interviewed Spielberg at that premiere. He said, I know two things. Number one, I would not have made this movie the way that Clint made it. And number two, it wouldn't have been as good with the approach that I had in mind. He did an incredible job. And yeah, he could be full of shit. He's just trying to get people into seats. But he came across almost with that boyish enthusiasm that Spielberg, incredibly to this day, still has. Yeah, Spielberg was still in his 40s at this point in time. But he couldn't contain how excited he was. He thought that Clint knocked it out of the park. And the part of it that the unspoken thing with this is that everyone understood, or it was understood, that the book was lousy. This was a lousy book. But Clint made magic. They turned straw into gold. And it's like, it's not that there wasn't a story in the book. It's that it was just very pulpy and breathless romance. And it's just, there was too much where it felt like the author was kind of patting himself on the back. The reason why the movie works, and the first thing that the film does that Spielberg clearly would not have done, the film is set in present day. It's set in what's supposed to be 1994 or 95, when the character that Meryl Streep plays, Francesca Johnson, she has passed. That's not really a spoiler. It's 1 minute into the movie. She has passed, and she has her children. She has 2 adult children. Neither one of them is doing really that great in life, but she has 2 adult children. And they're going through her personal effects, not expecting to find anything spectacular. Maybe there'll be a ring or a jewelry or something of value that they can, kind of look at as a keepsake or something to remember their mother by. But it turns out that there is a diary, more or less a book, and the mother had a very hot, steamy, sex-filled 4-day affair with a stranger that just happened to show up asking for directions. In the days before Google, if you are in the middle of the United States and you're looking for a series of covered bridges, hence the title, The Bridges of Madison County, in Iowa, you better get some help, because the maps are not going to be able to, they're not going to have a covered bridge in the map. So that happens in the book. But in the world of the movie, the events are filtered through the perception of the kids, who start off in a very angry place because their mom is basically saying she had sex with this guy and never told anybody, never told the father, never told them. It feels to them as if she just was a liar and a cheat, and they are angry. But the more they read, this is when the story kind of comes to life, where we see through what amount to flashbacks as they're reading these stories that the mother is telling. And they don't maybe she's lying. No, they know she's telling the truth. It's exactly that. Clint Eastwood's character of Robert Kincaid is a National Geographic photographer, and in that world, he's pretty well known. He's famous. I don't know if his name is known in town, but they know that, there's going to be this big shot National Geographic photographer who's going to be around, so we might see him. And he is lost. And he asks for help, and as luck would have it, the husband and the 2 kids are at a science fair. And this is, I guess, supposed to be about 30 years in the past, from 1995. Now this would be 60 years in the past. It would be a totally different movie. It would be even deeper of a period piece, or it would feel that way. She's by herself, and Clint's Robert Kincaid, and I think Clint is supposed to be playing younger. He was 64 when this movie was shot. I think he's supposed to be more like 55. We go with it. The thing with Clint, never had any plastic surgery. The scars are real, and he aged gracefully, but he aged. When he was 65, he looked like a really attractive 65-year-old man, a really impressive looking guy. That's not, it's not a criticism of him or anybody else. She's by herself. He asks her for help. She doesn't really have anything better to do. She makes a joke. She says, well, I was about to split the atom, but, I can help you out. Showing that she's a character. She's Italian born. She was born in a small village called Bari, somewhere in, I think, northern Italy. And English is her second language. And Meryl, for I don't even know how many times already, just to that point in her career, she doesn't just do an Italian accent. She does an accent that sounds as if she's from that region of Italy. And when people talk about Meryl with the incredible talent and the vocal abilities, that's what they're talking about. She wouldn't just do a British accent. She could probably do 6 different kinds of British accents, because she is, in the immortal words of Sylvester Stallone, she is marvelous Meryl Streep. So the way the movie takes its time, the book feels like it wants to get to, I hate to say it this way, but it wants to get to the action. It wants to get to the physical intimacy. And it is true. And there are certain, we joke around about this. There are certain double standards that I think society can handle, and it's okay. I understand. It's fine. You can't make a movie. You could write a book. You certainly can't make a movie about an unhappy husband having 4 days of sex with an attractive lady and then just going about his life. And he's the hero and he's relatable and he's just the most wonderful guy. We totally get why he did it. Now, there was the movie in 2002, which I think is kind of underrated, with Diane Lane, Olivier Martinez, and Richard Gere, where she basically has an affair, not because she's unhappy. She actually is very happy, but just because Olivier Martinez is a really hot French guy and she's horny, I guess. And she just kind of loses herself for a time. But it's, in that case, her character is less sympathetic than Francesca Johnson in Bridges of Madison County, but only by degrees. It's not, because Diane Lane is such an unbelievably talented actress, she makes you care about her. She has a moment on the train that, if you want to point to masterclass in film acting, that's in the top 10. She goes through about 9 different emotions in a span of 15 seconds. Can't do it any better than Diane Lane. And because of her, because we want to like her character, we give her a little bit of extra rope. So the thing that this movie, and a lot of people talked about it, and I have mentioned in previous times discussing Clint, is that there definitely was an evolution in at least his filmmaking style and the kinds of stories he was interested in telling. And one way that I pointed this out is that the Clint Eastwood who made High Plains Drifter is not the same Clint Eastwood who made Gran Torino. It's not even close. The Eastwood who made Outlaw Josie Wales, he's not the same guy from Gran Torino, or even Absolute Power, for that matter, from 1997, which was Clint's next film after The Bridges of Madison County. There was an evolution. And in particular, in this film, this is a mild spoiler, Clint's character starts the film where he seems like a guy who has himself together. And the way that he talks about his life, it seems that he's a loner, not a monk. And it's a really beautiful line reading by Clint. He took his time. He didn't race through anything. But the implication of him saying, I'm a loner, not a monk. He might have a girl in every port. He might have multiple girls when he goes on these locations, when he goes to scout locations and then take pictures for National Geographic. We have no idea. He might have 15 women at his beck and call. We don't know. And it's okay. The book might go into more detail. I'm not sure, because I read the book, but it just sucked. I don't remember that. But he kind of leaves the door open for just how active is this, in the movie, 64-year-old guy. In the book, I think he's more like 55. How active is he? How many different women are having the 4-day whirlwind tour of Francesca Johnson? I don't know. And they have what could be a friendship. If, for example, if the family was due to come back in a day and a half from when they left. Clint, as Robert Kincaid points this out, and it's a beautiful moment for him as an actor, certainly in his top 10, where he basically says, you understand that nothing has happened that you can't tell your husband about the moment he gets home, that you can't tell your children about the moment they all get home. A stranger came to your door. You were not hostile. He had a question. You answered his question and you invited him over for dinner. This is all above board. Well, that's not the story, though. They got another 2.5 days after that. So they don't just start having sex. They start having a lot of sex and a lot of different permutations of sex, at least in the book. In the movie, it's a little bit more straightforward, I think. But they are together as if they are a couple. And it's important to note this, that, yeah, they're having a lot of sex, but you're getting the feel, and you're supposed to get the sense, these two people were meant to meet in this fashion. It's too perfect for it not to have been fate, for it not to have been providence. And where Clint got a lot of praise from some segments of film criticism, and even maybe people who thought, well, he was a Republican mayor and, whatever. Some people, even then, I know, get excited. This is woke. This is not woke. This is toxic. This is not. We can argue about all of that kind of shit. But the same stuff was said 3 decades ago, just maybe use different words. But Clint was praised for what seemed to be an evolution in his thinking, because the character of Kincaid in the book comes across almost as a godlike individual and very much of what you would call an alpha male. Now, Clint Eastwood, young Clint, literally made his career playing alpha males. This is not an accident. He chose this project and chose to make this particular film, because Robert Kincaid in the world of the movie is not the same as the guy in the world of the book. He reaches a point where he realizes, spoiler alert, he is probably not going to get the girl. And rather than kind of gracefully bow out in much the manner of Robert Redford in Indecent Proposal, when he realizes, well, I've certainly had a lot of sex with this hot woman played by Demi Moore 30 some years ago, but it's not going to work out long term. She's going to stay with her husband. And he gracefully bows out. He doesn't fight. And it's actually nice the way the movie handled that. Well, Robert Kincaid in the world of the movie does not do that. He starts more or less whining and pining and complaining. Your kids are nearly grown. No, they're not, bro. They're not. They're not. You said you were unhappy with your... No, she didn't say that. You said that. So he goes from being an alpha male to being a regular person who has fallen in love and is now freaking out because he's going to walk out of that door at a certain point in time, at a fixed moment in history, presumably right before the husband and the kids come back. He will walk out that door. He will get in his truck. His work is done. He will get in his truck. He will drive away, and they will not be following each other on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or X or any form of social media, because it doesn't exist. And they won't text one another because that doesn't exist. They won't communicate by phone because how would that work? If he leaves, that's it. They are done. Over before it started. And Clint's acting in these scenes also ranks with his best work. It's, a couple of years, like literally 2 years after In the Line of Fire. But In the Line of Fire, he's playing a more active type of a protagonist. He is a man of action. In this movie, he gets action, but he's not a man of action. He's an artist in his way. He paints pictures with his camera. He takes it very seriously. When I saw In the Line of Fire, there is a moment, a famous moment, which I think is the single best moment in Clint's career from the actor perspective, where he cries with his co-star Rene Russo as he recounts his character witnessed the Kennedy assassination and didn't do anything to prevent it. And that has haunted him for 3 decades. That's one of the main components of the story of In the Line of Fire. And it wasn't in the script for that character to cry. It wasn't in the script. But Clint, in the moment, he followed his instincts. And not only did he tear up, but Rene Russo was so in the moment herself, she started crying. And the shot of the two of them from behind in the hotel where everything's going to go down the next day. But for now, it's just two people together, holding hands, hoping and praying that things don't go sideways the following day. And they're both pretty sure it's going to go very sideways. Let's just hope we both don't die along with the President of the United States. But the moment where Clint, as Robert Kincaid, almost has to admit that he has been defeated. He has been defeated by this woman who maybe she just doesn't feel exactly the same way, but she's not willing to throw her life away. This is not the end of The Graduate, spoiler alert. Elaine and Ben, right? They're going to be fucked about 2 minutes after the movie is over. You know, that's a mild spoiler. They've got a lot of problems about to take place in their lives. This is not that. And character Francesca Johnson makes real world decisions in real time. She goes against her heart. We're always told not to, but sometimes you got to take one for the team. She has more value to her children. And you could say she acted selfishly in having the affair in the first place. But in her mind, it's time. It's time to get back to my dull, drab, regular life. But this is my life. These are my kids. And I have a husband who needs me. And she does love him. He doesn't do it for her the way Robert Kincaid did. And that's kind of part of the point. It's a forbidden fruit that she sampled for 4 days. 4 amazing, incredible days. Time to go back to regular life. Or in the world of the world of the movie The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum character of Seth Brundle, he comes to the realization, maybe I was just an ant all along, an insect all along, who dreamed he was a man. But now the dream is over. The insect is awake. Robert Kincaid and Francesca Johnson, it feels like they were always destined to meet. But they weren't destined to be anything more than ships passing in the night, or in their case, passing in the day and the night, on the kitchen floor, and in a lot of other areas. But ships passing in the night, they were. And Clint's willingness to be so vulnerable. I mean, he's very vulnerable in The Line of Fire and Unforgiven, but willingness to go even further, to show this man has been broken. She didn't mean to, but he has been broken by Francesca Johnson inadvertently. No mask, no tough guy persona, no go ahead, make my day. Just a man who is badly wounded and now needs to pick up the pieces of a life which 5 days ago was pretty damn good and still is. But he needs to get his mind around the fact that, you know, don't cry that it's over. Be happy that it happened. That sort of thing. You know, you could insert whatever song lyrics in there that you like. So The Bridges of Madison County was a huge hit at the box office, in part just because Clint was so hot at the time from the success of In the Line of Fire and Unforgiven winning all the awards, and A Perfect World. A lot of people like myself saying, man, it was like one of the best movies of his career. And it made, I think, 182 million globally on not a very big budget. I think the budget was maybe 20-25 million. There's no special effects. It costs money to set a time period and, you know, that sort of thing. But it's not like Clint pulled 20 million. He probably made 5 million total. He didn't need a huge paycheck, and neither did Meryl. They did it because they knew it was going to work with them. And they created something that went way beyond the book, which it has the outline of what could be a good movie. And they figured out how to actualize it and make it a good movie. And I believe the screenplay adaptation was done by someone I really like, Richard LaGravenese, who wrote the original screenplay for The Fisher King, which is the second best screenplay I've ever read, behind Bruce Joel Rubin's Jacob's Ladder, which is, it's transcendent beyond imagination. That's how good Jacob's Ladder is. Fisher King's close, though. I think the movie's a 9 out of 10. It's almost as good as LaGravenese's screenplay. And when I tell you that's high praise, that's high praise. But his work adapting the book into this marvelous motion picture, top notch. And it's unfortunate he didn't get the courtesy of a best adaptation Oscar nomination, maybe because they thought the movie, you know, the Academy's like, it's still trash. You know, it's entertaining. Meryl and Clint sure had good chemistry. You know, there were rumors, they picking this up, after Cut is called. Is everything on the level here? Who knows? That's another thing that's lost to history. But it is a movie that I really, really like. And just another notch in the belt of Clint Eastwood Jr. He made so many great movies, rarely missed. And I would say the weakest film that he made, even since Unforgiven, is probably his movie he didn't star in, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It's just okay, with John Cusack and Kevin Spacey. I know some people loved it. There was some talk, Spacey, little Oscar buzz. It didn't happen, but he has had so few outright failures. He's really an extraordinary guy and an incredible career. And if you haven't seen Bridges of Madison County, I highly recommend it. If you like this sort of film, if you like traditional chick flicks four Hanky Weeper type movies, The Notebook, in that ballpark. It's right up your alley and worth your time. The Bridges of Madison County, released on this day, 1995, directed by Clint Eastwood, from Robert James Waller's hugely successful best-selling novel of the same title, and co-starring Meryl Streep. Who else is in the movie? Victor what was his name? Victor McClagan. It was the son, Victor Slezak. And I don't remember the name of the actress who plays the daughter. And Clint didn't cast, any big names outside of himself and Meryl. This has been episode 531 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Monday evening here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.